these gatekeepers are defense mechanisms, and they keep us, they think, safe. Okay, so that it's not on purpose to harm us. Like we were talking about when we were kids or we learned something, these gatekeepers are saying, hey, it's their subconscious, this is unsafe, or if you want to be liked or you don't want to be, physically harmed, you need to do things this way. And so they really hijack our present moment.
Hi there, I'm Wendy Rimmelspacher, and welcome to the podcast show, Dim to Daring. Do you feel like there's something bigger waiting for you, but you're not sure how to make it happen? You're in the right place. I'm here to bring you inspiring stories, powerful insights, and practical strategies to help you reignite your spark, realign with your purpose, and take those bold steps towards the life you were meant to live. Let's dive in, because you're not finished yet. You're just getting started. Welcome back to Dim to Daring, the podcast for women who are ready to stop shrinking and start stepping into the life they actually want. I'm so glad you're here today because this conversation, it's one I think a lot of you have been waiting for, even if you didn't know it yet. My guest today is Karen Fullerton, a women's emotional wellness teacher. She's a speaker and a spiritual energy guide. And her work cracks something open for me. Because if you've ever wondered why insight alone doesn't make you feel better, she has the answer. And it starts somewhere most of us would never think to look. The animal kingdom. Karen, welcome to Dim to Daring. And I can't wait for you to take it from here.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Great. Well, Karen, so you've had the MBA, you've had the executive career, and the drive that most people would call exemplary. You were checking essentially every box. But you describe a moment where you realized you were thinking better, but not feeling better. And I can relate to that feeling. Take us back to that season, if you would, and then what was actually happening beneath the surface that your achievements couldn't silence?
Wow. Yes. So with me, the outside, I always had the drive and to go after what I wanted. So I had my own business and marketing. I had my own nonprofit, but I still did not feel happy. That was a fleeting moment of accomplishment, and I felt like something was missing. And then just feeling better, emotionally. I don't want to say it happened in one distinct moment. It's kind of like the image that comes to mind. Or have you ever heard of the saying that the frog that's slowly boiling in the water doesn't know that it's
Yes.
boiling? So that's kind of over my life and decades what happened. And it just kind of slowly got a little worse and a little worse. And thankfully, through my learning about how not only just the energy work that I do, and I'm a Reiki master of 20 years ago, but about just before COVID hit, 7 years or so ago, I learned more about the physics and the quantum energy of our body, and that just filled in a missing puzzle piece for me. And so I would love to share that there was one aha moment, and I guess that was it. Because once I learned how to relate to my emotions, even though I was one, Wendy, if you would have, if I would have heard myself speak when I was in the throes of things, I would have said, I feel my emotion. I know my emotions, because I was one that would say I need to feel to heal early on, and yet I wasn't progressing. I wasn't transforming. In fact, the reactions got worse. So hopefully what we talk about today will shed some light on that and how I was able to, and we all are able to transform or reverse that pattern of reaction.
That's so interesting that you say that, because I think at any given point in life, we think we're doing something just right, and we think we're doing all the things until you get to that deeper level. that took some work to get there to that deeper level. And then you realize you can see the difference. Like, oh, I wasn't there, even though I thought I was. So I think a lot of women can relate to that feeling too.
Yes. And, life points it out to us when we're in need of learning something new. But I think we put too much pressure on ourselves. But if I want to share just one quick example that came to mind just now. I was pitching for, this is when I had my own marketing business, and I was pitching for a job of a city for marketing, like facilitator. And I stood up in this room of 50 people, and shared information, and it was quiet. Heads nodded, like, oh, okay. Not even any applause. It was just, okay, thanks for your opinion. And then the very next person who stood up, it was a gentleman. He said exactly what I said. And the response he got was overwhelming. And I think that was a pivotal point. Like, why? Why am I not being heard? What,
Mm,
I think women have this in common generationally. Like, we are really not feeling seen or heard. And that's just the start of showing you that your energy or frequency speaks louder than our words
hmm.
and anything we can ever do. So, and that
Ooh, I
energy
love
is
that.
the emotional, um, feelings behind situations. You felt it, right? You walk into a room,
Oh,
you don't even
absolutely.
you don't even say anything, and you know who to go to, who not to go to, who's happy, who's sad, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've even had that same situation where I've said something and then somebody else, and it was a male. I mean, it's happened more than once. It takes me right back to the room, to the boardroom, where I've had those same experiences. And I'm like, wait, what? I just said that. And now you guys are all into it. It's bizarre. So, yeah, I'm anxious to hear more of what you are going to reveal today. Also, I was thinking an earlier chat we had the other day, you shared with me that you grew up in a generation that treated emotions as a weakness, and even to the
Mm.
point to call it a distraction from your goals. So many women listening were handed that same blueprint. And maybe it's the era and the generation that our parents grew up and what was kind of taught to us. But how deeply
Mm.
did you absorb that message, and what did it cost you before you realized emotions weren't the problem, they were actually the signal?
Yeah. So all of us, I mean, kids, we're sponges. Anything that we're in emotionally or in our environment up until I would say like 10 really impact us, whether we consciously choose to or not. That's just, how we're learning, how we're responding, what's safe, what's not, how to cope. And so for me, I always say I'm an elder generation Xer. So I'm typical. I was the latchkey kid. My parents were divorced. Both of them were entrepreneurs. I had to have certain chores done when I got home. And so I had the to-do list. And, my mom raised 4 kids initially before getting remarried on her own. And so everything was a to-do list in the mind. And of course, coming from a family of entrepreneurs, that's the mentality. That was their generation is kind of more the just do it, right? Let's just do it. And so,
Right.
yeah, and I remember, when I was about 4 years old, my mom coming home from work, and I just want, any kid wants love and attention, and I would hang on her leg, and I don't fault her. She's passed now 20 years, so, but she had focus, right? I need to get home. I need to make dinner. So she would drag me along, on her leg.
It's a
And,
great
here's
visual.
me. I just wanted her to, bend down, give me a hug, say, I love you. And because I had no model of asking, right? There was no model in my family of asking for what you wanted emotionally. I kept quiet. And then about 3 years later, I was in the back seat of our car, vivid memory, and I said, Mom, you don't love me, hoping that she would say, oh, honey, yes, I do. Right. And oh no, it's the
Yeah.
reverse. So instead of so again, it's just generation, and we learn that our parents as well as animals. I mean, life is our greatest teachers. It just shows us where we need to heal in ourselves. And so yeah, that environment was, I really did absorb that message of not expressing emotions, not working with emotions, outthinking them, outdoing them, that sort of thing. And it cost me in, I was always confident because I did well. I did well at, in school. I did well at what I put my mind to, but the emotions eventually, like I mentioned earlier, just kind of became more reactive and more reactive. And I had danced when I was younger, which was a saving grace for me because I think that's how a lot of the emotions expressed themselves, which we can talk about that too a little bit. We're going to be talking about the body as an important part of our healing. But yeah, right before I got into learning about the quantum energy work, after the fact, my husband, who I had been married to for about just a few, no, well, I say a few years, it was a decade at that time.
The years go by
Time flies.
quickly.
I know, I know. He shared with me, he's like, gosh, you were so angry. I was worried, what that would mean for us. And I was like, oh my goodness. So, um,
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's suppressing that feeling because that's what you were taught to do, that's the acceptable behavior. It was trying to come out. It needed to come out.
I used to talk about as a good thing. I thought I was in control of my emotions. And I remember explaining to not my husband, but a boyfriend at the time, I said, I will take it, I will do things, and then it will just come out like a blowhole on a whale. And I thought that was healthy. Like, I can take it, just don't push me too far.
Hmm.
No. I learned that's a signal of not honoring my boundaries, right? The emotional gatekeepers that we're going to talk about in a little bit. And yeah, that's part of resilience is being able to process emotion in the moment and not store it. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, you were just trying to figure it out on your own, weren't you? I mean, it is that when you didn't have the role
Hmm.
models around you that were showing you how to let a little bit out all the time instead of waiting a
True.
week and then having it blow.
Yeah. And nobody told me that, I mean, that emotion, so they're not separate. In my experience, when I talk to people, most people do their mindfulness exercises, and some do emotional exercises or release, and some do spiritual and meditation, but they're not integrated. And what I hope my key message here to share is how they integrate. It's like juggling. You want to juggle them in sync with each other instead of trying to run from one room and juggle one ball to another room and juggle another one, and that doesn't get you very far. It's kind of a false sense of accomplishment when we're working on all these things and yet we're not seeing results, or we're feeling tired, or we're feeling exhausted. Like I said, we're thinking we're doing things better, but we're still not feeling it.
Yes. Well, I love the topic of integrating all of this together. And I know you're going to share a little bit more so that it brings it full circle for us. You describe nature and animals in everything you do, especially your Siberian Husky, Sergei, as some of the greatest teachers in your journey. What did they teach you that years of strategy and achievement couldn't?
Hmm. I absolutely love animals. I grew up with a German Shepherd, and yes, I had a Siberian Husky who I actually wrote a book about with my memoirs, and it's how he had taught me some of these life-changing moments by looking at situations and reflections. But if I had to pinpoint, because I could spend a whole hour on the animals, but if I could pinpoint a couple things, and anyone who owns pets, I'm sure this will not come as any surprise, but really joy and adventure are their true nature. Yeah, and you think about a dog, or if you know someone who had a dog and they just sniff everything when they're outside, they're curious, um, they scent the air, they stick their head out the window, that sort of thing. And so, in that means they're mastering the present moment, whether that's to redirect to keep them safe from something harmful, or to redirect to something more joyful.
Yeah. They are the epitome of joy. They are so happy to see people.
Yeah, and I could be throwing a ball with my dog, and the movie Up did this. I was going to say that where the cartoon dog goes squirrel, and everything changes,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So it's
Yep.
just like their instinct. I think it's just instincts. We have to learn how to get back to our instincts, what reside in our body, not our mind.
Oh, that's good.
And they reset. They reset so quickly. So I worked a lot with animals, and I had a nonprofit that helped lower income families get emergency vet care. And some of these animals were also just recent adoptions from shelters and had trauma. So I'm not saying, animals, they don't have their own traumas and things to overcome, but they reset so quickly because they stay in the present moment. So, yes, they might be fearful, but if they're in an environment of love and joy and healing, they reset and trust and shift so much more quickly than we do. They attune to that love, and that becomes their present moment. And that's a huge lesson.
Oh, that's so interesting that you recognized and brought that out. So tell me about the emotional gatekeeper. I'm guessing that this ties in with exactly what you're talking about with Sergei and other animals, but the part of us that's actually keeping us from joy. And what does a
Hmm.
gatekeeper look like in someone's daily life?
So they're defense mechanisms. These gatekeepers are defense mechanisms, and they keep us, they think, safe. Okay, so that it's not on purpose to harm us. Like we were talking about when we were kids, or we learned something. These gatekeepers are saying, "Hey, it's their subconscious. This is unsafe, or if you want to be liked, or you don't want to be, physically harmed, you need to do things this way." And so they really hijack our present moment because it's really keeping us in the past, right? So
Okay.
um, I narrowed them down, and there could be more, but I narrowed them down to four. Um, some of them probably sound familiar: the suppressor, the disconnector, the avoider, and the absorber. The suppressor, uh, you feel it, but that's, you push it down or you push it under the carpet. You just push through. I'm fine. I might feel it. I can't deal with it. Maybe it's too painful. You internalize it. There's exhaustion from holding that much energetic emotion from coming out. Maybe kind of like I did, right? And then I just burst it open at the end,
Yeah.
like that whale. The disconnector, what we might have learned, or what's um, keeping us safe, is that uh, we kind of disconnect and almost go numb. You don't want to connect with emotion. It's a little bit deeper. I was going to say disconnection, and that's the name of the gatekeeper. So that's when you might feel like to life. And, is this all there is? You might isolate, or sometimes it's physical numbness that comes into our body, so that we don't even sense our body cues, to alert us. And then the avoider keeps busy. It's kind of a distractor. You just kind of stay ahead of discomfort, right? You're trying to outrun it. Keep
Okay.
busy, keep going. The phone, phone scrolling, getting the kids, doing dinner. It's like we sometimes self-manufacture busyness as a defense mechanism because we don't have to really feel into that present moment. So this would come out maybe as a perfectionist or an overachiever, just that restless energy, like someone who can't sit still.
Yeah. Oh, I can totally identify with this one. It seems like the avoider is, well, all of these are automatic feelings, aren't they? Because your brain's trying
And
to keep you safe
yeah,
from the thing that you either don't want to do or don't want to face.
and it's not, black or white. I mean, you might say, oh, I'm this one from this one and this one from that one. But when you're looking at self-discovery and have a quiz that will help you line, that can help you determine which is the main one in your life. And it might change if you take it a second time, because but it helps you to bring awareness so that change can only happen when you're aware of something. And before I forget, the last one is the absorber, which is a lot of women actually, and a lot of empaths. This is the people pleaser, wanting to make other people happy, uh, not wanting conflict.
The peacemaker.
Yeah. And because you're trying to absorb all this emotion, it's like, wow, you don't even want, like if one off-putting moment happens, it can then spiral into like a whole day, it just like ruins your whole day because it's just you're absorbing, you're carrying and trying to fix other people's emotions. It's like, if they're not okay, I'm not okay, or it's my job to help them. I actually did part of this too with the nonprofit. I felt like it was my role to be on call 24/7 for these people, and it was affecting me. And, like I felt this responsibility, and it's like, no, it's, it's not. I do the best I can. I have my emotional health as well. And then I just came up with other resources that they could go to. So I felt like I at least gave them something and, didn't have to absorb all of that trauma 24/7. So, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm relating to this in the sense that when our brains try to keep us safe, it's from something in our history, something that happened. And so you go to one of these things like an avoider or suppressor. But really, maybe that was a suitable warning when you were 7 years old, but not today. And so it's good to question those things. But yet your body just has reacted that way for years. So it's hard to catch yourself and really call it out. So don't you have a survey that pulls these things out for people?
You do. It's an 8-question quiz. It's online. It's a pop-up. So if you go to my website, which is just my name, KarenFullerton.com, it will say which emotional gatekeeper on you. And
yeah, that's really cool.
Yep. It'll just walk you through it and give you the results. And then actually on the result page, a lot of what I'm talking about, and I think I'm going to divert for a real quick second, is that people just don't understand emotions, because with emotional wellness and healing, feeling is believing. And so I compare it to falling in love. You knew about it as a kid, or, before you actually had your first love, you saw it, you felt it was good. Maybe you had family love and you thought you knew what, a first love would be. And then it happened. And then it was like, oh my gosh, your whole body, right? The butterflies, the tingles. And it's like, you could never have imagined this. And that's what this emotional, well-being and then the self-discovery is about. You have to kind of really feel it sometimes to believe it. And so on that quiz, there's a link that for 20 minutes, I will do an actual mini emotional processing release to reset so that you can experience something and not just read about it. Because we're talking about the body and the mind. You can't internalize intellectualize emotional processing. So I do that as an offering with that quiz as well to help people to, feel the difference.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I hope all the listeners go out there and check out your webpage and find that little survey. It pops right up, I think, doesn't it? It's easy to find because it's, yeah.
It might even be too annoying. I think it's set up on every page, which I'm trying to figure out how to stop.
It's always a technology that's a stumbling block. So now that we understand what's getting in the way, let's talk about what you do actually to create that awareness. You describe emotions like as our soul's SOS signals and our soul's language. For women who've spent years pushing feelings aside to get things done, because that's what we do, that's a radical reframe. What does it actually mean to listen to that language? And what changes when we start treating emotions as information instead of interference?
Okay, so the first part with the SOS signal, I'll talk about that a little bit. And I love to talk an analogy,
Okay.
And so I equate it to, what if 2 ships were at sea and all they had was Morse code, and you didn't know Morse code. So you're getting this signal from the ship and you're doing the best from what you learned. Maybe you took a week worth of, SOS class or Morse code class, and you don't know if it's an SOS signal or if they're saying we're coming to war, right? So it's like, do you send help or do you start to fight? And so that's kind of what happens in our lives and in our body when we're not really sure of the message of our emotion, because honestly, all of our emotions are helping us. The anger, all the ones that we feel are unpleasant, the sadness, they're all leading us to joy and love and peace and all those wonderful emotions. It's just that, like we talked about earlier, we have to see them and hear them, just like as women, we like to be seen and heard without going into a story, without going into a backstory. And you start to understand how emotions connect your mind and I call it our soul, which is our heart, our inspiration, our passion that drives us. And I always like to quote here Dr. Candace Pert. She was the first woman neuroscientist in the 70s. And one of her quotes that I love is, your body is your subconscious mind, and you cannot heal it by talk alone. And that's what we all try to do. Um, and our emotions are actually chemicals or frequencies, and our soul, you know, it's also a frequency, right? No matter what your beliefs, if it's like, light is a frequency, music is a frequency. So if you're trying to talk to a frequency, it's like talking two different languages sometimes, and our emotions are the interpreter between the two. And so I don't know if that made it a little bit clearer or more, muddy, but uh, the reason that we have to start leaning into our emotion is because it creates, once you process it, and it doesn't mean years of therapy, it doesn't mean painful that's this whole emotional bridge process it doesn't have to be that anymore. This is some of the powerful things that I've learned with how our body works. And like I said, Dr. Pert how many decades old is that? And now it's just coming up into more foundational work with some of these practices. And so I'm sorry, that was the first part. I think what does it mean to listen to that language? That's the first step of the emotional bridge process is recognition. It's just to start to recognize our emotions, and say hello to them. That's all I say. Say hello to them. Don't judge them. Don't put a story to them. Don't lay blame that this person made me feel this way. It's none of the things that are external. Just name it. Um, and I don't want to get too far ahead, but that's why it's so important. If you think of a regular bridge, I guess, what does it do, right? It connects two different sides. So you can easily and more efficiently get from one side to the other. If that bridge weren't there, you could try to yell across this valley, or, could you really, like that old telephone game,
Yeah, right.
right? Am I really hearing what my soul is saying? And all your mind can do is try to work its best interpretation. Or you take the time and you find this path and you go all the way around. And so, you're taking all this time and effort to get to the other side. And, in today's age, we want things now. We're a little impatient with
Yeah.
that process. So
We certainly are.
emotions really are the bridge until we get into a little bit deeper. That's really the bridge to help your mind think in the way that best supports your true nature of your heart, without that distraction, without the emotional gatekeepers that don't mean to, but, maybe point you in not the wrong direction, but um, an inefficient, not really you direction. Like, it doesn't have to be, like you said, it was 7 years old. You have this alarm system in um, your house. This is a phrase from Dr. Darren Weissman, who is one of my teachers. It's like you have an alarm system going off in your house from a home you lived in, as a 5-year old. It doesn't connect. You don't need that anymore.
Yeah, we forget to question some of the things that our brain signals to us as a warning. We just listen to that warning and think, oh, we can't go there. But, well, why is that warning going off? Is it relevant today, or was that relevant 10 years ago? That's kind of what goes on for me, is questioning my fear.
And is the fear in the mind, or is it in the body, or both? Because like we said, these emotional gatekeepers in our minds, you can go back to, oh, this happened, 10 years ago when I did this, I fear this, or, I speak. And so a lot of people in this industry will say, and it is good advice, oh, turn your fear into excitement and walk out on that stage. But I cringe on that, because that sometimes is a good path, but it also can really, if there is some fear and deeper body chemical things going on that needs to be processed first, not even from speaking. It could be, something else entirely, that it doesn't even matter when you're just talking about an emotion. You don't have to say why or where it's from. But until that is processed, you could be, right? Our energy speaks louder than words. um, that's going to go out there. Maybe you weren't able to overcome. I don't want to scare anybody, but you could create a worse situation so that you don't want to do it again. And that's what I want to help women with, because is this something that is truly just, oh, I haven't done it before, what if they don't like me? Or is it deeply rooted into an emotional trauma that, what, let's just take a step or two first and figure this out and transform it so that you don't even feel that fear anymore. You don't have to talk. That's my whole thing, is you shouldn't have to talk yourself out of emotion. You should just be able to not react that way anymore. And that's the result of this type of work.
This is like a master class on reframing and rethinking the way we look at our emotions that bubble up through our body, because I think most of us haven't had any teachings at all about this. We just react and we take cues from our environment.
All those Gen Xers out there are probably saying, yes, yes, yes.
That's right. I want to ask this question. To me, it fits in with this, but I'm not sure if you'll think that it does. But a lot of times in corporate America, there's a real masculine energy that I feel like women feel obligated to step into to do their job and to perform and to reach the success that they would like to reach. When you do that, that is, in essence, you are denying your emotions right there by going to that masculine energy instead of using your feminine energy. I think, of course, you want to have a balance. Sometimes a person naturally has a masculine energy and sometimes a lot more feminine. I'm wondering how that comes into play with what you're talking about with emotions and honoring what's going on in your body.
It does, because anytime you feel like you have to change yourself to meet the external world, that is a signal that that's your mind at work. And then I don't want to say dishonoring, the body and the emotions, but that happened to me in corporate America. And it's instead of confidence, like that calming, quiet confidence, I became like, it was overcompensation. I was overcompensating, overdoing, trying to do too much to prove something to someone else, which can be at a root. I mean, it's not always, but it can be. It's the same thing as the perfectionist. You need to be accepted. You need to be, revered, or it could be a symbol of low self-esteem at play, or not getting the nurturing, like in my situation, from a child. So I would overcompensate. And because your energy speaks louder than words, so that would come across. And people think about somebody who does something to overcompensate. You can hopefully maybe sometimes feel that, and you feel the difference. between that and someone who is just this calm confidence. Because if somebody who is calm and confident, it doesn't matter. That's within them. That's within themselves. You can agree with it. You can disagree with it. And that person is okay with it because they're okay with themselves and that comfort level of themselves. Somebody who isn't and who is looking outside of themselves for this validation or promotion, and I'm not discounting people climbing the corporate ladder and things that might have to be done, but it also should be a cue because COVID, for as awful as it was also a blessing because it woke people up in so many ways and they realized, wow, it's like the fog cleared. I really don't want to be in that environment. And that's when people did not on purpose go back to work, or they started their own businesses and they homeschooled their kids. And so they realized what was really important to them. It was a kind of a wake up call. And so that's very similar. So the more that you can become self-aware, the first step in the bridge is recognize. For me, it's 3 R's. Recognize your feelings and don't judge them. Just look at them as feedback. That is a big message from the heart and soul. What would really truly make you happy? And we try to figure it out. And I'm saying, don't try to figure it out. Just take that first step. Just recognize it. Don't get, we're like, oh, okay, now the mind has it. No, no, no. Like, just go into the body. Just go into the feeling. And that's as far as that part goes.
Yeah, that's a logical first step because you can't address that which you can't see. So recognizing it really starts opening that door and creating that bridge that you're talking about. I want to make sure the listeners totally understand what the emotional bridge process actually is, because I know it's different from what most people would expect to hear. And you've talked about it and weaved it in and out some of the things you've said already, but you said it's not about the story, it's not about therapy. So what is it? And why does detaching from the story matter so much?
So first of all, the emotional bridge process is that it is a process. I purposely didn't call it a method because to me, method means step-by-step linear process. And even though I have a step-by-step process here, it's fluid, right? You can spend more time in step 1 or step 2 or step 3, and then we start to integrate back and forth. But if the emotional bridge process is to ensure that your mind is working in the present moment and in your favor. So this way you're not working from the past, the trauma, and sending out those signals, those emotions of whatever we just talked about, overcompensation, need, from childhood or work. And so the feedback that you get is going to be true to your heart's desire. And by doing that, the first step we talked about is recognizing your emotion and trying to go deeper than just anger, because sometimes, or the main emotion, because that's key. If all emotions are frequencies, then each emotion has its own frequency. And so the more that you can tune it, and it's like having a conversation with somebody and all you say is, hey, how was your weekend? Good. How was yours? Good. Versus having that heart to heart talk with your best friend. That's the difference of the type of communication that you're going to have with yourself. And your results are going to be that much more deeper. So, for example, you might start out with anger, but then, and you can use emotion wheels and other tools online to help you with this. They're all out there now, right? You can get so many different tools to help you, but it might be frustration. And behind that anger, it's like, oh, I keep doing this over and over again. It could be, irritation. It's a little different than frustration. It could be jealousy. And we always think of jealousy as like with romantic things, but I will tell you that emotion came up for me recently in relation to some social media. Social media is not always my thing, and so I learned from this this exercise here where it's like, well, I see all these people doing it. Why isn't it happening to me on this platform? And so realizing that the message that it is telling me is that that isn't in alignment with who I am. I'm more of a one-to-one person
Hmm.
communicator. So the first step, recognize, the do with that is just say hello to it. The don't is um, don't judge it. Just pretend like you're writing it down like a scientist. You just wanted this feedback. What am I feeling? Um, the second step is to reconnect the feeling to your body. We need to start connecting to our body more. Our mind cannot, like the quote from Dr. Pert, can't heal what goes on in the body, which emotions are part of our body. They're chemical processes in our body. They're ruled by our subconscious. So, how it came into our system, into our body, is through our senses. When we're children, we see things and we hear things and we feel things. And so we reprogram, I guess, out the same way. So we just need to quickly tap into, what does this emotion feel like in my body? It's in my stomach. I feel nauseous when I feel that. And that's it. And then immediately after that is the reset. And I know that this was going to be a question. I'm probably jumping ahead, but it makes sense to say it here, is a reset. And I do that by what I call a micro moment of joy. But you really want to bring into your body a joyful moment. And it can also be music. It can be um, anything that resets the emotion to the truth of who you are instead of reacting from a past program. And Pavlov's dog is an example of this in training. More back to animals, but training a dog, if it drooled when it rang a bell, if you want to retrain that dog, you don't ring the bell, let it drool, and 10 minutes later, try to get it to, go out the door or, shake its paw. You need to retrain it when the trigger happens. And I think that's super important as well.
Do you have an example of how to reset it and what's worked for you?
I have a few. Yeah, so I was initially, my first path was in getting certified in something called the Lifeline Technique. And they use a phrase. They use infinite love and gratitude because words have frequency. And that works wonderful. You can say that, to yourself. And it's similar to counting to 10 in a moment because words are frequency and it's disrupting an emotion with a loving thought. It can be any type of loving thought. Because I work so closely with the body and the chemicals of the body, I have, and I teach to find a memory that is just pure joy that you can see, taste, smell. Mine is, I shared with you in a picture. It's me with a dolphin, swimming with this dolphin, and all I have to do is think of that moment, and my body responds. That's kind of how like we respond in a negative way when somebody does something, and we trigger right away to irritation. This triggers your body to joy. So I can taste the salt water. I can hear the dolphin. I can smell, the water and what happened in that moment. And it all correlates to joy. And like my whole body lights up. And so what you're telling your nervous system, it's very similar. People joke on TV, go to your happy place. And there's a do and a don't to that because it is similar to that. But make sure you feel it. Make sure it's joy, or love. But two, make sure it's not an escape from that emotion because all you're doing is doing one of the gatekeepers again, right? So you're not avoiding the
Right.
feeling. It's how you actually um, perceive it. So that's why I said first you have to recognize it, reconnect it, feel it in the body. You're saying hello. You're saying, hey, I'm okay with feeling this. It's never our fault. We tend to blame ourselves for feeling a certain way, or we hear somebody, such as, maybe my parents in childhood, of, oh, if you want to cry, I'll give you something to cry about or something. So we feel shame and guilt. And so instead of going back into the gatekeeper of, oh, I can't feel this way, I'm going to disconnect from it or suppress it, you invite it in momentarily, allow your body to feel it without the story. And I know you asked me about that. I'm sorry. And then just go into this micro moment of joy. You can also, if people can't get there that easily yet, you can use music. That also is in that moment to bring your body into.
Oh, yeah. Music's a good healer.
Mm-hmm.
What I love so much about the picture that you described that you use for yourself to reset is because I'm looking at my desk, and one of my pictures was from my husband and I going on our honeymoon, and and it was it's just a tropical picture, but I can feel kind of the humidity, I can feel the sunshine and the water there too. It's also a water picture, but and thinking about maybe not the exact temperature of the water, but how easy it was to get into it without it feeling cold, and just all those sensories. Totally a reset type of a picture, like the one you described as well. So for me, the picture's a powerful symbol that I could start using too. That's a great suggestion and idea that you have there. Okay, I was also thinking about the analogy you had about baking and how to help women understand what healing actually requires. What are women typically bringing to the mix that isn't working, and what's the ingredient they're missing? Cute play on words, I might add.
Yeah. Is this another way of bringing an example to the importance of that process and the importance of emotions? Because if you think of your mind as a recipe card, right? Yeah, you're baking this whatever your favorite cake is. Your soul is the chef. It's the one that is going to be, deciding what this cake should be. Your mind is following this recipe card, but your emotions are the actual ingredients. So if you're trying to bake, let's take this into real life instead of just a cake. Well, we could keep it as a cake, but you're trying to bake this cake, and instead of sugar, you accidentally put in salt. It's not going to taste what your soul wanted. And your mind, it's to the mind, the recipe card, you were thinking you were putting in sugar, but you were really grabbing salt. And it's easier. I like to shift now to a real life example of, say, building a successful business. So, hey, I want to build my business. When I started my marketing business, hey, the great ingredients is confidence and determination, which, hey, I'm a Gen Xer. I have plenty of this, right? And inspiration. And so then I go to build my business, and it's not turning out how I want. That cake is not rising. I somehow got salt instead of sugar. And then by going into this process where it's like you actually go into evaluating your emotions around things that come up for you or don't go quite as you plan. For me, I realized that I went to the pantry when I went to grab confidence, and we talked about this earlier. I was grabbing overcompensation, right? It seems like confidence, but it has a different frequency. And my determination had a tad of desperation to it because, oh my gosh, I need to make this work. This is my only my income, or I have to get another job. And so it's very common to have that. And so you can balance that. I mean, those fears are valid, but you need to, like I said, work with them through the body, get them out of the recipe. And even inspiration, what we think is inspiration sometimes can be external. True inspiration, the kind that we are looking for in our end cake and successful business, is what I call inspiration. It's the kind that comes from inside. You're doing it because it lights you up. It causes you joy. You want to help people. You want to serve, not to make yourself feel better, but that's just your calling, or something like that that just lights you up, instead of an inspiration to do something to be famous, get recognized. And again, I'm not ditching all of these reasons, but I do need to share the difference between the different types of ingredients. And people, myself included, had no clue that it made such a difference in the outcome and the type of cake that you're baking.
At least for the essential pieces, you've got to have those. I was just thinking about when you're doing a normal recipe, what could you add that would be okay, like the chocolate chips or the coconut? So what could you bring to the table in some of those scenarios you just described that are helpful, and they are add-ins and they're welcome anytime?
The more that you learn about yourself and what truly makes you happy, those are the sprinkles. Those are the extra flavoring. Those are the things that make that cake even more delicious. Those are the good things, right, that you want to add. So you can expand on that, but your solid, hey, I wanted have this business work and it's crickets out here, or back to the cake analogy, oh my gosh, I added salt instead of sugar, this tastes horrible. What did I do? Because it's hard to know when you're putting in a different energy unless you start to really bring awareness to it. And people say, everybody has their theory on the greatest fear, right? Speaking can be a greatest fear. I really feel like people's greatest fear is self-discovery, because we've been ingrained that means we have to go back into our deep dark past. We have to revisit things. We have to think, go through stories that are just keeping us in the loop. And that's what the story does. It can keep you in that loop, and you will, repeat that pain or that fear because the story is external. When you're healing, and we're talking now about the body and how the body works and the chemicals of our emotions, it doesn't care about the story. And our mind doesn't know the difference between the past, the present, and the future. Everything is technically, like, if you think of a memory, it's happening in your body now. That's the power of the joy, micro moment of joy that I use as the reset. But it can also be what keeps you in a negative or uncomfortable pattern. If you keep focusing on what happened to me, what happened externally to me, instead of how can I shift this? I have the responsibility in my body. I have the power to do this. This is teaching me something about myself. I'm building this wonderful cake with chocolate chips and sprinkles. And so all it is about feeling safe enough to recognize the emotion and then feel it and say, I no longer choose this. I choose joy.
Okay, so that's taking you through those steps, the recognition, the reconnect, and the reset. Beautiful. So, Karen, for the woman listening right now who's exhausted from holding everyone else together, who's been the gatekeeper and the absorber for so long that she's forgotten what she actually feels, what's the smallest, most accessible thing she could do today? And not to fix everything, but just to start coming back to herself.
I would say to stop striving for perfection. And you mentioned this woman is exhausted from holding everyone together. So stop striving for perfection and see your own progress. I think when we look back and see how far we've come, how far we've learned and evolved, it gives us a greater perspective of how much we're really doing. And that helps us to release judgment on ourselves. I think the biggest thing is to release judgment. Emotions aren't good or bad. Release judgment on your emotion. Release judgment of if you're doing things right or wrong. I'm a firm believer we're really not doing anything wrong. We're doing everything on our path. It's, our own journey. So just release judgment, see yourself and the progress that you've made, and that will lay the foundation for going forward.
That's beautiful. It's stop doing. We always think the next step is to keep doing something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's what you've showed us today, that it's about reflecting and looking inside and listening to what's going on in our bodies and releasing judgment. That's a huge piece too. So thank you for saying that. That's a great response to help this community. So Karen, thank you so much for being here today and for sharing your journey with such honesty and depth. You've sure put so much work into all that you've described today. I feel like I've just taken this huge class on digging deeper and listening to my body. But what you've given the listeners, this permission to finally stop white-knuckling their way through life and treat their emotions as wisdom instead of a weakness, I know it's going to land exactly where it needs to. Your work is a gift, and I'm so grateful you brought it to Dim to Daring. But before we wrap up, where can listeners find you, follow you, and take that quiz you mentioned? Could you mention that one more time?
Absolutely. The best way to find me is my website, which is my name, KarenFullerton.com. And the quiz, the Emotional Gatekeeper quiz, is a pop-up on that website. It can be on your phone or desktop. And also on Instagram, I'm Karen Lee, Lee Fullerton. And in my bio, I have one of the Linktree URLs. And there's a lot of free resources there too. So I have like an ebook further explaining what a trigger is and the difference between mind and emotion. Just a really quick 8-page ebook called Don't Overthink, and a lot of different resources that I have all there in one spot as well. And those are the best ways to reach me.
Great. And then I always like to end every conversation with this one. It's my favorite question. What's the most recent daring step you've taken, big or small, and what did it open up for you?
The most recent is something I did recently, and I mentioned this early on. I am not a fan. I do social media, but it's not my passion. And so if you're talking about energy going into something and getting back what goes into it, I decided to follow my own blueprint and my own teaching and what I love and what lights me up. And I started doing these coffee talk meetings here locally for women. It's just a free cup of coffee, small gatherings, talking about a lot of the things that we talked about here today. They can ask questions. Just like how we've been sharing back and forth, I love talking one-on-one with people. I love the feedback. They bring up great questions. And so anyway, I consider that daring because I'm bucking the system. I'm going away from the traditional means of the influencer role and getting the numbers, and I'm going back to what matters to me and the one-on-one. And it comes back to me through greater interpersonal connections with women and the old-fashioned, I guess, guerrilla marketing approach, where it just kind of, spreads word of mouth, and that lights me up. But it's daring because it's bucking, like I said, bucking the system a little bit. And you'd think I'd be over that by now with the experience I had in marketing. But that's one thing that I'd say was my dim to daring moment of just trying something new.
Oh, I love that answer so much. It truly portrays you going back to your roots about wanting to be seen and heard. And you can't do it more beautifully than doing it in person with other women over a cup of coffee.
Exactly. And I love coffee. That helps.
Me too. Thank you so much, Karen, for being here on this show today. And I can't wait to catch up with you soon to hear more about how your coffee chats are going.
Wonderful. I would enjoy that a lot. Thank you so much, Wendy.
Thank you so much for joining me today on Dim to Daring. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love it if you subscribed, shared it with a friend, or left a review. It helps more women just like you discover the show. Remember, you're not finished yet, you're just getting started. Until next time, keep daring to grow and shine.